Hello, welcome all of you to attend my presentation entitled Applying the e-Portfolio in Assessing Learner Autonomy in Writing Classes. This paper by Nguyen from VS Center and Minh from Thanh University and the V Language. And this is my email address for further discussion if you wish. And my paper consists of four main parts: the introduction, literature review, the study, and finally, the discussion and conclusion. In the introduction, we will introduce some reason why we conduct this study. As we know, we try to enhance learning ability in reductive skill. We try to bridge the gap between receptive skill and reductive skill in second language teaching. However, writing is considered the most complicated skill in second language acquisition because the learner have to focus, had to experience, and had to practice to a certain extent to reach a certain level of competency. Therefore, this one is the most difficult and complicated skill that the learner had to spend time for practicing to improve their academic performance. And we can see that students sometimes they can master the linguistic competence with correct grammatical structures and lexical resource. However, they had to deal with certain difficulty when they had to handle the discourse competence and the metacognition. In this way, the teacher cannot decide the success of their learning process. And in this case, the autonomy will be the decisive factor that determines the success of their learning process to be the independent thinkers. Therefore, we try to apply the e-portfolio as an alternative assessment to assess the learner autonomy, to what extent learners are autonomous in their second language acquisition, especially in writing classes. This is the literature review that we apply in our study. The first one for the significance of the e-portfolio. As you know, e-portfolio, or we call it electronic portfolio, is referred to certain collection of data that help the teacher to observe the learner effort, achievements, and the progress during the learning process, and it's also the evidence for the improvements of the student over the periods of times of the classes. And we have some certain benefits of e-portfolio in second language acquisition. The first one is how to build the syllabus for the programs. And because the e-portfolio will help the teacher to determine what kind of features or what the characteristics of the learner that need to be taken into consideration when they design the syllabus. That is the most appropriate way to adapt to the learning style. Second, it's hard to record the learner competency as evidence of how they improve or what achievement they possess after the periods of times of the classes, as well as the comprehension and the skill in speaking and writing. The next one is help the learner to keep track with the development process. Teacher can observe the developmental process of learners, and they can, by themselves, to observe or to follow how they develop over the course. The next one, based on certain strengths and weaknesses, the learner can find suitable job or the job opportunity or the tasks that are the most appropriate or adapted for their levels, which are not too difficult or not too easy. And the next one, it helps the teacher to assess the efficiency of the entire course after the long period of time, because the teacher cannot manage the development of all of the students in one class. And finally, it helps to evaluate the learner performance during the course. Next one, I will present about the roles of autonomy in reductive learning. I will tell you reason why the autonomy is very important and to some extent it's vital in reductive learning of speaking and writing, and I will focus on writing skill. Because writing consists of certain volumes of challenges like brainstorming, outlining, and during the writing process, therefore the teacher cannot follow the learners step by step for a particular student with the limited amount of time in classroom activity. Therefore, the learner autonomy will decide the success of the learning process in writing courses. And the autonomy acts as the active responsibility of learners in the learning process, and it will affect the teaching activity of teachers. According to Shabither in 2013, she defined the learning autonomy with three main aspects of learning involvement, learner reflection, and appropriate use of the language. In the first one, referred to the learning involvement, it represents to what extent the learners participate in the learning process inside and outside the classroom. The learning process does not stop at the door of the classroom. It still continues after the school time, and they have to study at home. They have to study by themselves. The second one, for the learner reflection, it represents the way learner builds a plan to set the goals, how they realize the learning outcome to the aim for, and develop the ideas during the writing process. And the last one referred to the use of language. It represents the naturalness and suitability of language use to indicate the efficiency of the target language. Sometimes learners have some wrong assumption about the way they should use English with the effects of the traditional or the first language culture and social values. Therefore, intercultural communication competence also play a role in ensuring the understandability and acceptability of their paper or their writing performance in the target culture. It represents the ability to successfully indicate or express their ideas in the target language culture, not from the first language culture. And we will try to analyze why we should integrate the e-portfolio in academic writing, because this will be the platform for interaction between teacher and student, as well as the student with other student, and peer discussion on academic topics. And in this platform, the teacher can give some comments and student can respond, and they can give comment for all the students. And then students can learn from each other. It's more effective than just focusing on the teacher at the center of the class. And then we come to the research question. So what are the effects of the application of e-portfolio to assess teenage learners' autonomy in academic writing context? The study was conducted with a sample size of 20 students during the periods of 8 weeks at the English Center of the US. And I observed in the academic writing classes, we apply both qualitative and quantitative methods, because to assess the autonomy, we should apply the qualitative, but the qualitative method should reflect how to develop the writing performance. It should refer to the quantitative. And we apply certain instruments like observation, and the main one is the e-portfolio and the interview. And after that, we have the findings of the interaction over the period. And at the first time, when we introduce the portfolio, student has quite limited numbers of interaction on the platform, because they are not actually familiar with this method. And then when they can adapt throughout the times, and the levels of interaction increased over the time of 8 weeks, and each week over 200 interaction, which means the 200 ideas change over the time. And here's the comparisons of the performance before and after the study. As you can see, in the retest we apply, we deliver a question to assess the learner competence at the beginning of the course, and you can see the mean score only 5.28. But after the period of times of the study, the mean score increased to 6.08. and it can identify, it indicates the improvement of the learner competence after the study, after the applying of the e-portfolio. Because in the portfolio, we can indicate the strengths and the weaknesses, what achievement the learner possess, and what are the weaknesses that they should improve, what they should avoid, and all the students can get access to this platform to see the limitation or the mistake that other friends has made and to improve or to avoid in the future. Therefore, they can study from each other. And this is the learning attitude to the effectiveness e-portfolio. At the first time, my students, they share that they're not really familiar with this method, but after we introduce the reason why we should apply the e-portfolio, the benefits of e-portfolio, and how it can help them to improve their learning efficiency. And after the period of time of adapting, and you can see the level of interaction increased. And after that, the students show the agreement toward the effectiveness of the e-portfolio. And they think that this is very effective in enhancing the ability in second language learning, especially for writing, because they can receive the feedback outside the classroom, they can observe or they can read other papers of other students. They can learn from the strengths and weaknesses of other classmates to improve their academic performance in writing classes after the time, not just focusing on the mistake of them, of their personal mistake only. And after that, we conducted the interview to analyze and to understand their strengths and their attitude toward this method. And we can say that the first one, they consider the peer interaction. They can interact with their friends because learning from friends is considered more effective and easier than focusing on the teacher only. And then it showed engagement, and they because the level of interaction increased over the time, they tend to participate more frequently in the platform, and they can become more independent in second language learning because they can study at their own space. And if they have some mistake, they can go back to review the paper and to understand why they made a mistake and what should they improve and what mistake other students make and they can avoid in the future or in other paper. And this also refer to the flexibility of learning style, which means they can choose a broader time for studying, regardless of the time, regardless of the location, because it free access and is accessible for all members of the class, and is therefore increase the motivation. Because at school, they have to follow the speed of other students, but when they study at home, they can study at their own speed. They can be more confident in the language learning process. And this e-portfolios is really recommendable because it's a constructive platform. Because you, as teacher, you can give feedback for learners, and learners can give feedback for other students. And sometimes, based on the learner feedback for each other, you can modify or you can fix the misunderstanding of the learner. And especially, it's the autonomy control, and they will be the controller of the autonomy, and we can assess the levels of autonomy and to find which student is the most autonomous and which student should raise the levels of autonomy. And we can give the immediate support because it can add some comments, it can add some question for further discussion in the forum or in the platform. And it also indicates the progressive development of the student over the time. Next one is referred to the self-awareness. Students can be aware of their strengths and their weaknesses, of their achievements that should be rewarded. and the weaknesses that should be improved. And finally, refer to the practicality. Practicality here, because it's very easy to conduct. It's free and it's effective, and it can be applied in various teaching contexts, not only for writing, but also for listening. Because if they observe that their score decrease, they can make more effort to improve their performance. And here is the reference of our paper that you can reach more to understand about the concept of the portfolio. And that's the end of my paper regarding to the learning autonomy in second language acquisition, especially in writing classes. If you have any question, feel free to contact me with my email address here, or you can comment under the post or the YouTube video. Thanks for your attending.